Thank you. We'll now move on to receive a briefing on permanent supportive housing capacity in the Travis County Supportive Housing Initiative pipeline and on the city's rapid rehousing program by the Homelessness Strategy Office. These are items number 4 and 5. We'd like to welcome David Gray, our Chief Homelessness Strategy Officer, and Jamie May with our Housing and Planning Department, both representing the City of Austin. And then we'll also have joining us today Pilar Sanchez, the head of the Travis County Health and Human Services Division, and Nathan Fernandez for this joint briefing. And I just want to welcome, I think we have several provider representatives in the audience today, as well as many collaborative partners, including Vocal Texas. Thank you all so much for being here today for this important discussion.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, council members, for inviting us to provide an update today on the work that the city and the county are doing in collaboration to enhance housing opportunities for our community, especially our residents who are experiencing homelessness. As the presentation comes up on the screen, I just want to reintroduce the panel that we have that will be facilitating today's presentation. I'm David Gray, the Homeless Strategy Officer for the city. I'm joined by, to my right, Jamie May, who is our Housing and Community Development Officer. To his right is Pilar Sanchez from the county. She's the Travis County Executive for Health and Human Services. And to Pilar's right is Nathan Fernandez, the Senior Planner with the Travis County Health and Human Services. And I think it's exciting that we're all doing this presentation together, because I think it's a demonstration of how the city and the county are working across our jurisdictions to deliver these projects and these services for our residents. If we go to the next slide, just a quick agenda for today. Several of the committee members had requested just an update on the American Rescue Plan Act, and so I'll provide a brief update on just where we're at on the city side with ARPA investments. We'll then talk about the city's rapid rehousing investments, things that we've been able to do through ARPA dollars, as well as the road ahead. And I think we have some questions that we're going to have to wrestle with as we think about the future of rapid rehousing and what that looks like. And then I'll turn it over to my colleagues to talk about the permanent supportive housing project pipeline. On the next slide, this is, again, I know many of you have seen this slide already. This is just an overview of the ARPA spending framework, the $93.5 million that the City Council allocated to address homelessness in our community. The two categories that are particularly relevant for today are the top category, which is the capital investment for housing development. That was a $11.1 million investment from the city to help essentially build new things. And so a lot of the projects that Jamie will talk about are projects that were funded in part through that section of the ARPA spending framework. The other section that's relevant is the rapid rehousing section, which is $42.5 million that council had allocated to rapid rehousing investments in the city and on the city side. The next slide shows where we're at in terms of the spending status for ARPA funds. As of today, 99% of the federal dollars that were allocated in this spending framework have been committed to projects. And you could see the breakdown here. I won't walk through it in detail. What I will say is that $1.2 million that's listed as balance to commit, those are dollars that have been allocated to a category in the spending framework. And my staff do intend to put forth recommendations on how to utilize those funds. But we currently have about $5 million that is in a contract development phase that we need to work through. But rest assured, we do wholly intend to spend all of our ARPA dollars and have those funds committed. Our goal is to return no ARPA dollars back to the federal government. Sorry, Mr. Biden. If we go to the next slide will kick off our discussion around rapid rehousing. And I think it's important that we kind of have a common understanding of what rapid rehousing is. Sometimes these programs, people hear about them and they could develop their own understanding or their own meaning of what these are. And so just to ground today's conversation, when we talk about rapid rehousing, what we're talking about is a program that's designed to connect individuals experiencing homelessness to housing through a time-limited, tailored package of assistance. When we talk about the time-limited component, what we're talking about is housing assistance for folks that allows them to exit homelessness and stabilize their housing need. And that for the city contracts, that assistance is delivered over a period of 24 months. The additional tailored package of assistance includes connection to a case manager who is there to help individuals overcome their barriers to maintain their housing. So when we talk about the 24 months, I do want to be clear that for our contracts, when we're entering into our contracts with our vendors, we are budgeting for full support for 24 months. However, the way rapid rehousing works is over the course of the 24 months, it's expected that the client is given the tools and the resources to wean themselves off of the need for the city assistance. So by month 25, that client is whole and they're able to live and to thrive on their own without the need for assistance. And so that's the whole philosophy around this type of investment within the local homeless response network. So as I mentioned before, the city Homeless Strategy Office, we oversee 13 rapid rehousing contracts. The bulk of these contracts recently came over to our staff when we were established as an office in December of last year. But now we have full capacity to oversee all these contracts. These contracts are designed to provide up to 24 months of support. In terms of people who we've supported last year, I'm happy to say that we supported 2,226 people through this investment last year. 74% of our rapid rehousing exits have been positive exits. That represents 510 households. 26% of the exits have been negative. That represents 177 households. The next slide takes a little bit of a deeper dive into our rapid rehousing service contracts. And I'm not going to walk through all the details on this slide, although I'm happy to revisit it during the question and answer if you'd like. But I think it's important that our office is transparent with you and with the public around who we contract with to do this work, what is the dollar value of each of those contracts, what our annual client goals are for each of our vendors, and the actual number of people who we are serving. And so in total, what you see here is annually, our contract amounts are in the ballpark of about $23 million. The significant majority of that is ARPA investments. ARPA makes up more than $18 million of that $23 million total. The general fund picks up the rest. And so as we talk about ARPA and ARPA being one-time funding, this is something that we're being cognizant of because I think the proof is in the data. Our goal with this investment, this whole investment, was to serve 1,800 individuals. Through the work of all of our partners, we've been able to serve 2,200 individuals. And so we are surpassing our goals. And at the same time, we're preparing for our system to somewhat right-size once those ARPA dollars eventually fade away. I do specifically want to note here also, when it comes to LifeWorks, you'll see that LifeWorks' client goal is 145, but their client serve is 55. We actually recently increased the goal for LifeWorks, and so this 145 represents their new goal. But I do want to give LifeWorks the credit for both their rapid rehousing ARPA as well as their general fund contract. They have exceeded their goals as well. We just had the ability to increase their goals. But even with those increased goal numbers, we're still performing above where we expected to be. The next slide will just want to talk about next steps when it comes to city-funded rapid rehousing contracts. And this is the conversation that we've been having with all of our stakeholders, our providers and our vendors, all the way to the community organizations, many of whom are here today. A lot of people are concerned about what happens when the ARPA dollars run out. And so we are not blind to that. We want to be very transparent that we are forecasting this as a challenge. You know, when the ARPA dollars were allocated to rapid rehousing, it was specifically intended to address a backlog that existed at the time. And as you saw in the previous slide, I think in many ways we've been able to successfully work through that backlog. We're now planning for ARPA rapid rehousing contracts to reach their capacity. And we're having those conversations now with all of our providers as part of our mid-year spending plan conversations. We're ensuring that each one of our providers has enough funding to support the clients who are currently in their care. And we're also seeing what providers have additional capacity to take on new clients. And we want to make sure that we're setting clear targets for how many new clients we can serve, so we're not over-enrolling and then under-delivering on the promise. Because the federal government requires all ARPA dollars to be spent by December 2026, our organizations that have ARPA rapid rehousing contracts will have to cease accepting new enrollments December of this year. And it's designed that way to ensure that all the enrollees receive the 24 months of assistance that we're promising them. If we enroll somebody June of next year, they will not be able to receive the 24 months of assistance because the federal guidelines do not allow us to spend the dollars beyond December 2026. We also anticipate that ongoing funding is going to be needed in FY 2026 if it is council's desire to support the ongoing system capacity. I do want to note that when we talk about some of our other investments like HEAL, which is our compassionate encampment closure program, many of you know that the beauty of HEAL is not just compassionately closing the encampment and moving everybody into shelter, but it's also once they're in shelter, they're fast-tracked into a rapid rehousing opportunity. Well, those rapid rehousing opportunities are ARPA-funded opportunities. And so a funding lack here could have some negative consequences on our ability to continue to make HEAL occur at the rate at which we're able to currently do it. There are some near-term actions that are right in front of us, and these are actions that we are currently taking to make sure that we're addressing and getting ahead of some of these forecasts. Nobody wants to drive the car to the cliff and then just fall off the cliff. And so we are doing things now to make sure that as the ARPA dollars fade out, we are able to also maybe phase out some of that work. And so the very first thing that we're doing is making sure that all of our ARPA rapid rehousing contracts are extended so that they do not end until December 2026. This will ensure that all of our providers have the time that they need to provide the assistance that we're promising to the community. As I mentioned a moment ago, we are conducting our mid-year spending plan reviews with all of our vendors. This will allow us to establish some very clear enrollment targets for the remainder of 2024. So if we are enrolling clients between now and December, we can guarantee that those clients will receive the 24 months of assistance that we are promising. We also recently released a request for proposals for homeless diversion services. And diversion is not rapid rehousing. However, what diversion does is it allows us to get upstream of the need of rapid rehousing. If we're able to keep people housed, they don't need this intervention. And so the beauty of this strategy is that it allows us to mitigate the need for ongoing rapid rehousing and hopefully also permanent supportive housing by trying to resolve individuals' crises quickly and resolve those upstream. The next portion of the presentation will begin to talk through our permanent supportive housing inventory. And so I will transition the mic over to Jamie May, but of course I'd be happy to answer any of your questions at the conclusion of our collective presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Jamie May, Housing and Community Development Officer of the Housing Department. If you go to the next slide. So this kind of shows our pipeline of inventory for permanent supportive housing over the next several years. As you can see at the beginning in the last 5 years, it's a slow climb. Most of that is due to the fact that we needed developers, we needed money, and we needed to have cash in hand. Through the 2022 general obligation bonds, as well as through other funding sources such as the Downtown Density Bonus and Project Connect, we have been able to invest in permanent supportive housing. As you can see in 2024, this year, we do expect to see an additional 600 units coming online, and we'll go through those developments shortly after that. I also want to point out in 2026, we expect to see another additional chunk, large number of units coming online. That number is expected to grow as we continue to invest in developments in permanent supportive housing. We do expect to see more developments, and in fact, we can project out to 2027 through this presentation today. I would also point out below the national PSH production up through 2023. If that number stays consistent, and this is not a number that we have control over, it's from HUD, but if that number stays consistent, you can see that we are far surpassing the average investment and the growth rate in permanent supportive housing throughout the country. So we are doing the work. We're investing the dollars and trying to get as many units on the ground as possible. I do want to point out that it takes time and capital. So we'll go to the next slide. This is our existing inventory today. Most of these have come on in the last couple of years. Waterloo Terrace, Capitol Studios, these are Foundation Communities developments. Chalmers West with HACA providing 8 permanent supportive housing units for veterans. What is important here is that not only do we have the 237 units on the ground, but HACA has also partnered with us to provide the vouchers. Those are mainstream vouchers for individuals exiting homelessness, as well as VASH vouchers for veterans. In concert with that, the City of Austin has dedicated Housing Trust Fund dollars to a local housing voucher program. Our first deployment was to Aspero at Rutland, which is a Austin Housing Finance Corporation partnership with Caritas. Through that program, we have been able to provide 101 permanent supportive housing units in that development. The 70 units remaining at Aspero at Rutland are occupied by clients of Caritas. So they may also be permanent supportive housing, but they are defined by Caritas as opposed to defined by the voucher. We'll go to the next slide. In this year, in the calendar year 2024, these are the developments that we expect to see coming online in the next several months, 6 months or so. Pecan Gardens, Balcones Terrace, we expect to see those in this summer, and we would like to invite you all out to the grand opening as soon as that is scheduled. Kensington Apartments, Bungalows, and Libertad, those are going to take a little bit of time, but they are currently underway. And again, I'd like to point out that of the 293 permanent supportive housing units you see here, 255 have support from HACA. In addition to the 28 local housing vouchers, that does leave a gap of about 10 units without vouchers. That's something that can be handled. However, once that gap gets too large, then you risk having the development run into operating challenges, operating funding challenges, particularly with investments into the facility, repairs, putting a new roof on, things like that. The final column on this end is the service funding, and I would note that the City of Austin is a primary funder for a majority of these. These come through Austin Public Health and through the Homeless Strategy Office. But as we get further down into the next slide, you'll see that we have some question marks. And we'll talk about that more later. We'll go to the next slide. Here we'd like to point out that this is calendar year 2025. Again, another 288 units coming online in 2025 with another 213 vouchers from HACA and the 75 vouchers from the City of Austin. The red highlighted entry, Cairn Point at Cameron, is a property that is supported by the the Travis County SHIP, Supportive Housing Initiative Pipeline. Too many acronyms. So we're excited to see that one coming online next year, and that is the first of several that we'll be talking about. We'll go to the next slide. These are the other SHIP properties. As you can see, we have 410 units lined up to come online in 2026. That's 260 vouchers with 120 local vouchers. So doing some quick math in your head, you can see that we've got about a 30 voucher gap. And there are some service gaps. However, with these investments coming online, I would point out that Seabrook Square is a partnership or a ground lease from the Austin Housing Finance Corporation to Integral Care. And we are investing in all of these properties along with Travis County. And the next slide, I believe, gets us into 2027. For 2027, we can see an additional 117 units coming online. These last two properties, Bailey at Berkman and Bailey at Stasny, are both applied for the low-income housing tax credit, the 9%, which will be awarded in July. One or both may be awarded, or neither. So that's just one of the challenges that we have is finding the funding, securing the funding, and being competitive for the funding. The 9% tax credits are extremely competitive, but if these do not win, there are other ways to build these units and to find the capital necessary. Overall, I'd like to point out that our total existing units and pipeline, we've got 1,345 units. At the end of 2027, we should see approximately 1,300 units, with over 1,000 vouchers being deployed by HACA and more than 250 vouchers being deployed by the City of Austin. The bottom line is that the investments are being made. It does take time to build, but we are approaching solutions in a collaborative and thoughtful manner. And with that, I'd like to go into some more detail on the SHIP projects with our friends from Travis County.
Good afternoon, Pilar Sanchez from Travis County Health and Human Services. Next slide, please. So what is the Supportive Housing Initiative Pipeline? We like to call it SHIP. It is $115 million of investment through Travis County out of $247 million that was received by the county in ARPA funding. The 115 are allocated to 11 projects that are mostly made up of over 2,000 supportive housing units. The funding was presented to the community as a one-time funding opportunity. It was a partnership with several nonprofits, 10 nonprofits, and it was a result of a larger community goal that came from a countywide housing summit. Together, a large group of people partnered, people from the city, from the county, and the nonprofit community, along with philanthropists, and the philanthropy side being hugely supported by prior Mayor Adler. And we've worked very closely together to try and catalyze the development and the construction of these 2,000 units. It was agreed that the county's role would be to fund the construction and the nonprofit's role to fund the supportive housing through either fundraising or finding other government funding. Next slide, please. So the SHIP includes several types of housing throughout the entire continuum of housing. We have shelters as part of the project through the Other Ones Foundation, Esperanza. We have tiny homes through Mobile Loaves and Fishes, and then we have community living through a new entry, recovery living, and multifamily units and single room occupancy through several nonprofits. A lot of those had experience building and operating supportive housing, but we were also very interested in helping organizations that did not have that experience. And so we sought out a new entry in Austin Area Urban League to bring into the fold as well. Next slide, please. I really like the way that Sharonda put that the spirit of human collaboration is what we're seeing through this. We've collaborated very closely with your city departments, especially in the housing department. And but it's been federal funding that's come in for these 11 projects, state funding, city and county funding, along with at-home ATX philanthropy funding. And it's been a great opportunity for Travis County to endeavor into this type of initiative. Our Health and Human Services Department did not have the experience and had never funded housing in this manner before. So we are very appreciative of your housing department because they've loaned us best practices. They've met with us continuously. They've shared documents with us that we can replicate so that we didn't start from scratch. We meet on an ongoing basis with the housing department, and we're making sure, your city housing department, we're making sure that we're lock and step with each other to ensure that these projects are really going to be viable and that we're on the same time frame. We've aligned closings to close together. We've aligned when, who's going to fund what, and timing on who funds first, who funds last, just several details that have really helped us put this, really forward this initiative. We're also at the county working very closely with ECHO through their latest healthcare collaborative, which is looking for solutions on how to fund permanent supportive housing. And the city and Central Health have been a part of that, and it's being led by Dell Medical School. In addition to that, we're a part of another partnership with the city and Central Health, which is called At Home. That was something that came out of the Pay for Success initiative, and the Travis County Health and Human Services is contributing $3 million towards that At Home initiative, which is going to fund permanent supportive housing at a couple of supportive housing properties. So Travis County hasn't really done this before. There's a difference in mandates for a city and for a county. The city's budget is 5 times bigger than the county's budget. The city's staff labor force is 3 times bigger than the county. And so we hadn't done this before, and so we're very happy to be a part of this now and to continue to collaborate. Commissioner Howard has been leading the effort in collaboration, and so we're really hoping to continue this. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Nathan Fernandez, our senior planner at HHS at Travis County.
Appreciate it. All right. I'm going to run through a few of the PSH programs and developments that the city, through the Rental Housing Development Assistance, RHODA, and the county, through our ARPA funds, have co-funded and collaborated for capital financing. So the first one is the Urban Empowerment Zone. This one will be operated by the Austin Area Urban League, as mentioned above. They will have 80 units that are now fully vouchered, and the county is contributing ARPA dollars towards this one, and the city is contributing funds through the general obligation bonds. Next slide, please. The next project is Cairn Point at Cameron. This is a project that's currently under development, slated to come online next year. It's going to be operated by Caritas of Austin for low-income seniors and people experiencing homelessness that are aged 55 and older. This one will have 150 efficiency studio apartments. As of now, I believe 2/3 of them have vouchers, and the county and city contributed a similar amount of dollars for capital on this project. Next slide, please. This project is called Real Gardens. It will be operated by Family Elder Care for seniors age 62 and over experiencing homelessness. This will be a 60 studio apartment unit complex, completely vouchered and coming off the coordinated entry list. The city and county are both contributing similar amounts of dollars through ARPA and GO bonds. Next slide, please. Jamie mentioned Seabrook Square 1 earlier. Just recently, Seabrook Square 2 has broke ground through Integral Care, who will operate a 60-unit facility for adults experiencing mental illness and or living with drug and alcohol experiences. This will also be a 60 PSH apartment complex, fully vouchered as well. Travis County and the city's housing department worked very closely on this one in order to complete funding gaps that arose. There's always very interesting developments that come up on every project that we have to help work together, and it's been very integral there, excuse my pun, to work together on this funding. Next project, please. The last of the PSH projects I'll go over is the Works 3. This is through LifeWorks for youth and young adults experiencing homelessness. There will be 120 units in this complex. And Travis County and the Austin Housing Finance Corp are working on closing on financing later this year. Next slide, please. Oh, one more, sorry about that. The Lancaster, go back, thank you. The Lancaster is a project that is breaking ground here in just a few weeks through the SAFE Alliance. This will be designed for survivors of domestic abuse and sexual violence that are also experiencing homelessness. This will be also a 60-unit property with a mix of unit breakdowns, and that will also be fully PSH and vouchered. And Travis County and the City of Austin funded a similar $7.2 million figure on this one. Next slide, please. So there are several other projects in our SHIP portfolio, some of which are collaborations with the city, some are not. As Pilar mentioned earlier, we helped a new entry with their Weberville Transformation Center. It's currently an inpatient recovery housing for folks that are experiencing substance use issues. The county provided funds in order to expand that development so they can provide more beds for transitional housing. Those folks are generally coming off coordinated entry as well, where they have transitional housing at the Weberville Center, and then they place them in more permanent supportive housing destinations. As Pilar mentioned as well, we also funded through the general fund, the Other Ones Foundation Esperanza community. It's a great community off of South 183. They're currently in the process of building 200 tiny homes that are designed for transitional housing, and they have great success in transitioning those folks into more permanent housing destinations. The biggest chunk of our ARPA funds in this portfolio went towards the Community First Burleson Village, $35 million of ARPA funding contributing to 650 tiny homes of permanent housing. They are designed for folks to live there permanently. 50 of those units are PSH with vouchers, and that's currently under construction. And last but certainly not least, we have two projects with Foundation Communities. Last year, the city and the county both contributed funds towards the development of Juniper Creek Apartments. It's 110 units that's currently in construction for folks experiencing homelessness as well as low-income families with children. And then later this year, we'll be closing on Burleson Studios. It's co-located with the Mobile O's Community First Burleson Village on the same property. $15 million of ARPA dollars will go towards building 104 units. Currently, 50 are aligned for PSH with vouchers. So that's it for the county SHIP investments, and I'll pass it back to David.
Thank you, Pilar and Nathan. And so, council members, I think what gets us most excited about this work is the fact that these are projects that, we're not talking about them in these like theoretical kind of conceptual phases. These are projects that are being developed and under construction right now. You could drive by almost all of these sites and see dirt being turned, cranes in the sky, and buildings being built. However, there is one more slide in the presentation, and I know my technology team is probably not happy with me right now, but there is one more slide in the presentation because part of the story that we also have to talk about is the services funding. Every year, the Homeless Strategy Office, through contracts that we've now inherited from Austin Public Health, every year on the city side, we invest close to $10 million in PSH services funds. And those are dollars that are supporting individuals that are residing in the units that exist today. Now, we're planning for a large influx of new units being constructed. You just heard from Jamie and our colleagues at the county talking about the new units that are coming. As we prepare to bring those units online, we also need to be prepared to make sure that there's adequate resources for those residents to receive access to the supportive services that will truly help them be successful. And so this slide lays out where for each of the projects that we anticipate coming online from calendar year 2024 through 2026, which of those developments have units where housing vouchers have been allocated. However, they are unfunded from a services perspective. And so we've identified about a $2.1 million funding gap in supportive services for units that will be opening in 2024 and 2025. I will say that, many hands make light work, and there are a number of entities that are working towards identifying funding opportunities for these units. So in addition to the Homeless Strategy Office in Travis County, I know ECHO has convened a PSH healthcare collaborative that, as part of their work, is looking at funding opportunities. I believe Pilar mentioned that many of the nonprofit providers are looking at other strategies to bring on supportive services funding. And as part of the developments too, right? There are kind of strategies that are being envisioned and finalized around bringing in some supportive services dollars. And so there's a lot of people who are oriented towards this, but I think it's important that we have just a public recognition that there's still some more work to do here. In addition to that $2.1 million, there's an additional $4.3 million in gaps for supportive services units opening in 2026. Now, people will sometimes ask, why don't you take the ARPA dollars and use that to pay for supportive services? And part of the reason why on the city side, and I can imagine maybe even on the county side, why we haven't done that is because permanent supportive housing services are an ongoing expense. And so it wouldn't help anybody from a capital perspective to take one-time funding and try to allocate that towards an ongoing expense. And so this is why many of us are now engaged in this work of saying, it's great that the units are being built. I mean, that is huge. Austin and Travis County are really leaders nationwide when it comes to building the housing capacity that we need to support people through this intervention. But now we're trying to make sure that we can bring the services dollars to the table so that we could get these units filled up as quickly as possible. So that concludes our briefing. I appreciate your time and giving us the time to talk through this work that we're doing. Just some key takeaways, because I know we talked a lot. The first is rapid rehousing is an effective intervention to help individuals in their homelessness, especially when we're able to connect the right people with the right intervention. We also are aware that ARPA funding for rapid rehousing will largely begin to run out as early as FY25, which will necessitate ongoing funding if we are looking to sustain this program at its current level. As Jamie, Pilar, and Nathan mentioned, the available PSH units in our community are anticipated to grow by more than 300% this calendar year. And that pipeline has more than 1,000 units, which will be delivered to our community by the end of 2026, should all things consider on their current project timelines. And so with that, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair, we again appreciate your time today. Happy to answer any questions from you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Such great information. We appreciate having both the county and our city staff here for this very timely topic. Colleagues, who would like to kick off our questions? Councilmember Quadri?
Sure. I appreciate the presentation. I have a lot of questions, and whoever wants to take them can kind of take a stab at it. My first question, well, I guess this one is for you, David. But you had mentioned that a city budgeted 24 months of assistance in rapid rehousing contracts, but we hear that people often getting much less than that, even though they may need more. Given the reality of the lack of affordability and the challenges people go through from being unhoused to being housed, what is the city going to do to ensure that rapid rehousing programs offer 24 months of rental assistance if a person needs it?
So currently, we are doing a mid-year spending plan evaluation with all of our ARPA-funded rapid rehousing providers. As part of that work, what we've instructed our providers to do is to pause new enrollments into those programs so we can calculate the total number of clients that we're currently serving as of today and make sure that each one of those providers has enough money in their budget to provide the 24 months of support. Now, we know that there's not new money on the table, and so part of this is going to be some rebalancing. We know that we have a good potential that some of our providers have under-enrolled and are not projected to spend down. And so we do plan to come to council with some rebalancing across contracts to make sure that if somebody is enrolled, that they have the 24 months of support. The other part of that too, council member, is once we finish that process, and I've told my staff that we are going to finish this process by June 15th. It's not a target date. We are going to be done by June 15th. At that point, we will know how many new clients we can enroll into these ARPA funded contracts, guaranteeing those clients the 24 months of support.
Great, thank you. And then have you, and this is for anyone, have you heard any feedback from service providers about challenges they face implementing rapid rehousing for people who also qualify for permanent supportive housing?
I could probably take that. I'm sure all of us have maybe heard some challenges in that regard. You know, rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing are two very different interventions. And in large part, they're designed to serve very different types of clientele. When you think about rapid rehousing, you're really thinking about individuals who can achieve self-sustainability with up to 24 months of support, whereas permanent supportive housing is really designed to serve individuals who are chronically homeless and who are going to need significant more levels of care and support and coordination until they're able to thrive on their own. The city nor the county direct the referrals into permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing. And I think it's just important to be clear about that, because sometimes people will ask why the city chose to put somebody in a program, and that's not the way it works. Our continuum of care has a process by which people are routed. And what we find in conversations with our providers is when certain clients who truly need PSH are routed into rapid rehousing, it becomes very challenging for the case managers and the providers to provide the right level of care that person needs, because what they truly need is a permanent supportive housing type of intervention. I'll just say, kind of even outside of that, you know, this work is hard work. And so there's challenges with respect to workforce, challenges with respect to finding units that could be made available and utilized by these populations. But to your question, council member, yes, it's really important that we're working with our continuum to make sure that the right people are being teed up for the right intervention.
And I think it's safe to say the whole dais really does appreciate the work that every single one of you, the part they all play in all of this work. I got 3 more questions. Of folks who return to homelessness, do we know how many people were qualified for permanent supportive housing or were chronically homeless? And then I have I guess a part B of that question, but I'll let you guys answer.
I believe that data exists. I don't have it in front of me at the moment. But we would work with our continuum of care lead and our HMIS administrator, which is ECHO, to pull that data.
Yeah, do you mind sending it to our offices?
I don't mind at all. We will do that.
Thank you. And then this might also be some information you might have, but do you guys have any idea what some of the reasons are that people return to homelessness when their assistance ends?
Sometimes it is because a person who's routed into rapid, that's not the right intervention for them, unfortunately. And so they're just not set up and ready for that intervention to end. And so that kind of speaks a little bit to how the referral process works or doesn't. Sometimes we have clients who don't fully comply with program guidelines. And then sometimes we have providers who have issues maintaining levels of case management or other types of support. And so these are really the reasons why we've decided that now is a good time to pause. Every year we do these mid-year spending plan reviews, but this is the first time that we've truly said, let's pump the brakes, kind of reevaluate our performance across the board here, and then set ourselves on a better chart and better path forward so we can mitigate some of the issues that are resulting in 25% people or households exiting negatively, really trying to reduce that number and grow the number that are exiting positively from 75% to as high as we can take that.
Great. And then second to last question, kind of around data. Are there people who maybe counted as positive exits, but then they kind of slip through the cracks and they end up being homeless again? Does that sometimes happen?
We do track
Yeah.
the number of people who return to homelessness after they go through rapid rehousing. I don't have that data in front of me directly. I'm sure we have maybe some ECHO staff here who could speak to that right now. But I do know that as an intervention as a whole, we don't see very many people who positively exit rapid rehousing
To go back.
return to homelessness. And that's part of the reason why, this intervention is a great intervention. It works really well for the people who it's designed to serve.
Great. And then last question, could you provide any update on further updating and replenishing our multi-year partnership effort for permanent supportive permanent supportive housing support services?
I think I understand the question.
Yeah, sorry.
You're-
It became, yeah, sorry. It was a word
You're fine.
salad.
It's a lot of support in
Yeah.
these conversations. So our PSH supportive services
There you
contracts
go.
are
You
general.
said it better than I
got
did.
you.
Got
I
it.
got you.
Yeah.
Those contracts are general fund contracts, and so what we do is we renew those annually, contingent upon the budget process. And so should council allocate the same level of funding for PSH supportive services, then when we meet with those vendors at the end of the year, we'll renegotiate those contracts at that same funding level.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes. Councilmember Ryan Alter.
Thank you very much. I think it's really important at the outset just to kind of recognize the diversity of the voices we have in the room, and that's what it takes to have success, right? We have community members, I see Caritas, ECHO, Foundation Communities, the DAC, the county, ourselves, right? No one can do this by themselves. I think, Finding Home ATX, did such a great job bringing a lot of these groups together, and that is what it is going to take for us to continue to have success. So I really just want to, at the outset, appreciate everyone being here who has such a demonstrated invested interest in helping us address this issue for our community. But looking at some of the information here, I wanted to kind of back up for a second when we talk about the services, the vouchers, the capital, just so we can all be on the same page. When we talk about the vouchers that we're getting from HACA, those are operating subsidies, but not the service subsidy. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is an operating subsidy to provide support for the facility itself. If there's repairs that need to be made, or just to keep the lights on and help pay the front desk staff. But it is an operating account, not the services itself.
And when we talk about these numbers, whether it's the 4.3 million, the 1.6 million, those are annual numbers. Is that correct?
I would like to say
yes.
that when a property receives vouchers, they're able to collect a much higher rent for this population than they would otherwise. So if you're housing people who were previously homeless, then usually that individual has a very, very low income and can pay a very low rent amount. If you have a voucher, then that property can charge market value. And so that creates a cash flow that can then support services. So usually what happens is your operating costs are so much, you have a cash flow, and then you use the surplus for services. So I think there's a lot of room for the cash flow to support services.
Okay. And the services gap, is that on an annual basis? It's like 4.3 million in 2026. Is that per year?
Right. So the way that when we talk about services, we think about those as an ongoing basis. So correct, that gap is an annual gap.
Okay. Looking at the pipeline, and it is really exciting where we're headed, and I think, it was touched on here, but it bears repeating. We are in a position today to have these units because Finding Home ATX and Mayor Adler and the community at large was willing to invest in this. And so that's really exciting. And I think we should, it's important to acknowledge the hard work that was done to get us here, and our housing staff continuing to build on those efforts over the past few years to get us even further down the road. But one thing that I truly believe and have deep concerns about are we invested a lot of capital starting in 2022, and we are seeing the result of that, and it is really impressive. We don't have another ARPA coming in a few years or even right now. And so what are we going to do in order to plan for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years? Because to your point, these are very expensive projects. There are only so many 9% tax credits out there. And so how are we going to meet the level of need and not just have this big surge, but then once again level off because that's what is available?
Thank you for that. Yes. And if the county has some ideas, we'll pass it over. But I will point out that Aspero at Rutland, and I keep talking about this one because it's a great property. It opened in February, and we funded that before ARPA. That was actually the funding story behind that one is winding and entertaining, and I'll tell it to you over a beer sometime. But with the investments that the city has made in housing, both from the general obligation bonds as well as our density bonuses and fees in lieu housing trust fund, we've been able to invest in permanent supportive housing outside of ARPA, outside of our federal one-time dollars. So we do intend to continue building. We know that 1,000 or 1,500 units that we will have on the ground by 2027 is not enough. We know that it needs to be more. And at the groundbreaking of Aspero, Councilmember Kassar said, "Oh, this is great. Now we need 9 more in every council district." So that's our goal. We're hoping to build as many as we can. Finding the dollars is always a trick, no matter what type of building you're building. The services dollars, that's another question for this guy.
And Councilmember, if I may, I think part of the realization also, at least on the staff side, is we also know that we're not going to build our way out of this, especially if we don't help people upstream before they get to the point where they truly need PSH. And that's part of the reason why earlier this month our office launched that preventative homeless prevention pilot demonstration program. Our goal with interventions like that and with RAPID are to kind of catch people early in their homelessness experience. We also work with housing and their anti-displacement team under Nefertiti to even try to get to them before homelessness even becomes part of the conversation, right? But if we can catch people early, it costs significantly less dollars on the city side and on the funder side to help people early in their experience than when they become chronically homeless. It's also better for the clients because I can guarantee you that the people who spoke today would much rather have had the support to stay in the apartment or the house that they were in rather than having to become homeless before they qualify for support. So it's better for the clients and it's better for our providers. And so we're doing more work upstream also. And those are investments that we're making not just with ARPA dollars, but also with general fund dollars. And we're grateful for council in your last budget session specifically allocating dollars to allow us to do the prevention work. So we're trying to address the bell curve at both sides.
And I'm about to go there. I'm glad you brought that up. But one more question before I do, and that, you mentioned that some of these projects are currently undergoing review for the tax credits for 2027, right? That's how far out we are looking. And so the question I have is that, the planning we need to be doing now for the end of kind of our current horizon, what is our target for 2027? Do we think we need 300 units, 400 units, 500 units? I think it would be really helpful for us to look out over the next few years beyond our current, what we know is coming, and help us understand not only what the target is, but what then the funding needed, and do we have that within the bonds? Do we need to, these are very long-term planning projects, and so sadly, we are now planning for 4 years away, and if we don't do it, we're going to be in a really bad spot. And so I'm curious where we are in that.
Yes, thank you. The last number that I saw from ECHO's point of time count was about 6,000 individuals who are unhoused and unsheltered. That's our target. We know that at the end of 2027, we'll have 15, so we're 25% there. It's going to take more money. It's going to take more time, and it's going to take more investment. But through our existing resources, I believe at the adoption of this year's budget, Councilmember Kadri had a resolution to dedicate at least $10 million to permanent supportive housing. We've done that. We just need to write the memo now and get it back to you. But that's how we have to do it, through our rental housing development assistance program, through competitive award cycles, through partnerships, and through all of the resources that we have, building as many units as possible so that we can serve the entire population. And about services?
Sure. So, Councilmember, in addition to everything that Jamie just stated, one project that we are working on with ECHO is updating the gaps analysis. And so you might recall a few years back, the city and others supported this report and funded this report called Investing for Results, which kind of spoke a lot to system gaps, not just in PSH, but in every intervention level from shelter all the way through. We're in the process now of looking at that model, and this is through some funding that ECHO received from the federal government, and then they've invited us to participate in this conversation. So we're looking at the model, number one, just to reassess the integrity of the model. Is the model modeling the right things? And then running the analysis through the model to get us those updated results. I think last time I checked with my team, we're still about maybe a month or two out, but we are doing that work just in recognition that the state of homelessness today is a little bit different than what it was when that report came out a few years ago. And we want to make sure that we're having better data-informed conversations so that when we come back to you all and we talk about things like the need for shelter, the need for RAP, the need for PSH, we have some more up-to-date figures to help inform the recommendations that we're bringing to you all. And I'm sure the recommendations that our county colleagues are bringing to the commissioners.
Yeah. Well, and I know Matt has joined us from ECHO and is doing that work, and I'm really excited to see. We're going to finally get a comprehensive look at what does our system need so that hopefully we don't need to build 6,000 PSH units because it's so expensive, that we know what that number is, we know what the rapid number is, we know what the diversion number is, we can right-size our system and invest appropriately. My last kind of issue here, as we look at the comparison of the programs within our broad homeless services delivery, what is the typical PSH cost per individual? I mean, I know there's capital into services, but if you were to put a dollar on like how much that intervention costs per person, what would that be?
I'll speak to the services side. I don't purport to know anything about the voucher side. On the services side, we've estimated roughly $20,000 per person per year. Of course, that number can vary person to person, but just on an average basis, about $20,000 per person per year, and that's the denominator that we used on that last slide that we presented.
Okay.
I'll have to yield to the housing or the Travis County staff to talk about the voucher side.
So as mentioned before, the HACA vouchers are integral, no pun intended, to our inventory. In concert with those vouchers, since we know that they are dependent on federal awards and things that we cannot control, we have created the local housing voucher, which is funded through the Housing Trust Fund. We dedicate $3.6 million from the Housing Trust Fund annually to those vouchers. And that serves as noted about 250 units per year. As individuals are stabilized, to Pilar's point, as individuals are stabilized, those vouchers do not have to cost as much because the individual can support more of their own, be more self-sustaining. However, We know that rent is going to continue to go up. We know that prices are going to continue to go up. So even as we save money on individuals, we're going to be spending more money on those on things like rent and power and phone bills.
Right.
So, yeah, as far as a dollar per person, it's tough to say.
Why not, like the HACA number is like $15,000 a voucher, right? That's what they.
I believe that's about right.
So if we think about that plus the 20,000, you're looking at about $35,000. Based on your numbers here for Rapid, we're looking at just over $10,000 a person. So clearly, the ability to have that intervention work early, we can serve more people with the resources we have, and hopefully also not have an individual who has to wait 2 years before they receive the service. And so I just want to leave it in, and we're going to have so many more of these discussions, but making sure that we match up the service with the person and have the conversation about whether it is incumbent upon us to not necessarily go based on who's ever at the very top of the list if that service doesn't match up, because we might be able to better serve the broader community if we are able to have that match and not have someone who is put in rapid rehousing because, of course, they want a housing solution instead of waiting however many years for PSH, but then is ultimately being set up for failure. And that's a really difficult conversation that I know we're going to have as a community, but I think it's something that we can't just wait for someone to become the most expensive and then provide a service. We want to help at the front end so they don't even become homeless, but then if they do, how we get the services in place quickly. So I appreciate you giving me the time here. I lots to talk about, but thank you all for the work you're doing.
Thank you. Councilmember Velasquez, if you have questions, let's take your questions. I do want to highlight for the committee here that we do have 12 speakers on the next item, and so I just want to make sure that we give time for our community members to have an opportunity to share their concerns and feedback.
Thank you. How many people are housed with rapid rehousing and also qualify for permanent supportive housing right now?
So, Councilman, we'll grab that data from ECHO, and we'll make sure we get that data back to all of you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. I'll reserve my questions in case we have time here towards the end. If that's okay, I want to move on to item number 2. Item number 2 is a continuation of this item, but it's a posting for discussion and possible action. Can the clerk please call the speakers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your first speaker is Tony Carter. If you would please come to the mic. You will have 2 minutes.
How y'all doing this evening or this afternoon? First off, my name is Tony Carter, and I'm a leader with Vocal Texas. Me and my fiance Jennifer are currently housed with rapid rehousing. I was unhoused for 7 years before this came up to me. I stayed in the Salvation Army when I first became homeless. After that, I stayed in other places. I camped around Austin. Before I got rapid, we had been staying out in the woods. We had to go get further and further out because the cops kept sweeping our camp. And they still do that right here today. I had done the housing assessment a bunch of times, but I never scored high enough. Even though I struggled with drug use and mental health. Last December, I even went to treatment. I should be in permanent supported housing where I can get more services and support. The last assessment I did, I had to do it with my fiance, Jennifer, because with me, myself, I couldn't do it because they said we had to do it together. And someone came up to me in 2023 and said I had it. I didn't even know what they were saying, what they was talking about. And I know I was on the list. Right now, our rapid rehousing pay for an apartment that costs $1,700 per month. Our program is supposed to end after 12 months. And we're not sure what we're going to do. So with that being said, I couldn't finish it up, but receive
Okay, Speaker, your
housing.
time has expired. The next speaker is Taylor Cartwright.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Taylor Cartwright, and I'm a leader at Vocal Texas. I'm currently in the Rapid Rehousing Program. I found an apartment in November and was offered 12 months of help with rent through DAC. I'm halfway through the program right now, and it's going by too fast. I've been unhoused since I was 20, about 11 years, and had untreated PTSD that early in my time being unhoused led to a felony. Finding work is extremely challenging, and even now, 6 months into my rapid rehousing, I still can't find work. It's funny, I could find more work on the street than when I'm housed right now. I've done countless applications, Indeed, cold calls, walking into stores, but no matter what I try, when they run my background, it seems to be a dead end. I feel like I need more support and resources to stay housed after this. It's going too fast, and I feel like I have to do too much on my own. And sometimes I don't even know what's out there, and I'm not even sure of what I need. 2 weeks into my rapid rehousing from Echo and Sunrise's services, I was notified by DAC that my permanent housing came up and I was finally approved. The paperwork and my case management was picked up by my DAC caseworker. I was notified that I needed to find a place that would take it. So not only have I been trying to apply and get a job, but I've also been looking for an apartment that will accept my permanent housing voucher. Since November, I've been visiting apartments and been turned away from unemployment, my background, my income. Even though I have a voucher and case manager letter of support, I still encounter apartments that need proof of income or won't accept the vouchers. I don't know what to do as my background is hindering my job search. My voucher expired this month and I've already sought an extension. I should be looking for an apartment as we speak. But I'm here because there's too many in my shoes that need this to be voiced. The thought of losing this chance after waiting so long to get the housing I need makes me feel like I'm facing death. Going back to the streets is a whole nother world, and finally I feel like I'm getting a chance to escape from it. The city needs to support making sure people like me are assisted in transitioning into permanent housing. People need more services and more months of rental assistance to find housing that lasts. Thank you so much.
Next speaker is Lori Ann Martinez. Laura Ann Martinez. Next speaker is Darren Thornhill.
All right. My name is Darren Thornhill. I'm the Incarceration Outreach Specialist over at Texas Harm Reduction Alliance. And within my job, I work with our participants and I do their coordinated assessments as well as their PSH packet if they qualify for that. Over at Texas Harm Reduction Alliance, a lot of our participants are in active drug addiction and most of them are unhoused at the moment. A lot of people come to me to do their coordinated assessments, and what I'm finding is when they come to me, that's the first time that they qualify for PSH. Why is this happening, you may ask? The reason behind this is because a lot of people don't feel comfortable with the person giving them their assessment, so their scores are actually low and they're not getting the score that they deserve because they're underreporting on their coordinated assessment. This is a huge problem that I've seen across the board. People will come to me that are on rapid rehousing, they'll come to me and try to do an assessment to try to get the PSH, but since they haven't been unhoused for a year, they're not allowed to do the assessment to get the PSH. It's a catch-22, to be honest. I've been in the same situation where I was homeless and I've taken multiple assessments. I've underreported myself. I got a really low score when I really deserved a PSH score, but I just underreported because I did not feel comfortable with the person that was giving me this assessment. We definitely need more time on our rapid rehousing. 1 year is just definitely not enough, especially when you're dealing with someone who's been homeless their whole life and they're just trying to get comfortable and understand the living and the responsibilities that come with that. During that 1 year, by the time that's up, they honestly don't have the funds, they don't have a job, they're having a hard time finding a job due to the criminal records. So that 1 year is honestly for them to get comfortable, and then that second year will be for them to find a job and be able to pay their rent. I still don't know many people that will be able to pay $1,600 a month when their lease is up. You got to remember, these people have been homeless for all their life. $1,600 is hard for me to do, and I have a full-time job. During this time of me being homeless, like I said, I was not able to get any housing due to my criminal background. I ended up having to get housing by myself. So I'm just asking that you guys please approve more rapid rehousing for 2 years. That way we give people a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martinez is available now to speak.
My esteemed city council members. Sorry, didn't know that. My esteemed city council members, I'm addressing you today as leadership in Vocal, Texas, a member of community-powered ATX, a citizen of the city of Austin, and a formerly unhoused citizen who has endured a substandard rapid rehousing program. My experience included an early exit from the program for not cooperating with the program rules. That was basically an unreasonable request. As part of the program rules, I was asked to save over $600 a month out of my $1,100 a month income. I do not personally know anyone, nor can I even imagine anyone saving almost 60% of their income every month. Does that sound like a reasonable request? No. It seems to me to be an unreasonable request. Other people in other programs are either rejected or removed from their programs for various reasons that, like me, have often been unreasonable or impossible rules. My point is that we need to standardize the assistance that's given through the rapid rehousing. We need to know each and every person is afforded a fair and equitable access to both the program and staying in it until permanent housing is secured. The early exit from the rapid rehousing can cause many problems, including evictions, owing monies upon move out, and as was the case with me, a return to being unhoused. All of these can make the situation worse for those experiencing these difficulties. It may make it harder to get an apartment later when the permanent supportive housing does finally become available.
Mr. Speaker, your time has expired.
Sorry, but if you could share your testimony with us via email, or if we can make copies of her testimony, we'll be sure to share that out with the members of the committee.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Liz Baker.
Hello, my name is Liz Baker. I am the Chief Programs Officer at the Other Ones Foundation. Rapid rehousing is one of the most complex and challenging projects to implement, and there have been several amazing providers across the city that have done a fantastic job of implementing this really complex model very quickly in response to COVID, and I first just want to commend their efforts. The rapid rehousing model is flawed. I think that information has been shared and understood. I will reiterate that a significant amount of chronically homeless clients are not maintaining housing at exit, let alone what happens weeks, months, or even a year after their exit from the project. As David Gray mentioned, rapid rehousing is not effectively meeting clients' needs, mainly because of mismatch of intervention. And I would just say from a provider perspective that that's been my perception as well. I encourage you to support and encourage any and all efforts to match the client to appropriate housing interventions. This I understand a lot is driven by the continuum of care, and that's the Leadership Council and ECHO. As a member of Leadership Council, I can only speak for myself and not as for the entire group, but I am committed to partnering with city staff and other providers to try to move the policies and practices forward to make our system stronger. And I would ask that in addition to to moving those policies forward, that city encourage and support efforts to create a safety net. This is going to take time. These policies don't happen overnight. And in the meantime, we have X number of clients that are currently in rapid rehousing. I don't know that number either. That are currently in rapid rehousing who are chronically homeless and we know are going to fall back into homelessness. And we have an opportunity to change that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Maria Cepeda, and then Christina Allen. If you would be prepared to come to the mic, you'll have 2 minutes.
Hi, how you all doing? Respectful council members. My name is Maria Cepeda, and I'm a leader of Boca, Texas. I'm here because I have rapid rehousing, and I don't know when I'm going to do when it runs out in 3 months. Before I got into my housing, I lived at the Salvation Army and then the Bridge Shelter. And before I slept in parking lots or anywhere that it was safe. I was always trying to find a safe place, but you know nothing is safe when you're sleeping on the streets. I stuck together with other people so we can watch each other's back. When the Salvation Army shut down, I ended up at the Bridge Shelter, and that's how I got rapid rehousing. I moved into my apartment on August 2023. A lot happened to me after that. My mother passed away. My son got locked up. I got a knee injury after a car crash. I've been struggling with my mental health and physical health, and it's not been easy. But my apartment is a studio apartment. It's very affordable. The rent is $763, and my rapid rehousing covers it. I am happy there. I just like to be at peace there. My first case manager told me I will have 2 years of rental assistance, but now my new case manager says they won't have the money to help me with the rent on the next year, that they are running out of funds. I'm supposed to take over the rent, but I don't have a job right now. After I went through all this, it's been too much. My mom, the hospital, my son, it's just been too much. My knee is finally healing from the car crash. I don't know how people are supposed to do this. Time goes by so fast.
You can finish your sentence, please.
Okay. People have so much going on in their lives, and people need time. But every night I think about what's going to happen when my rapid rehousing runs out in August. And I know it's just not me. If I end up back on the street, what is going to happen to me? I appreciate what the city is doing for me, but I just wish rapid rehousing was longer. I'm not just speaking out for me, I'm speaking for other people that they're sleeping on the streets and who have rapid rehousing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Eli Cortez.
Thank you.
Christina Allen, would you prepare to come to the mic, please?
Yes, please. Colleagues, we have about 6 speakers left. We are posted to take action on this item, so I just want to make sure we can continue to have quorum for action. We're going to go a few minutes over. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. City Council members, I'm Christina Allen, the Deputy Director of Partnerships and Collaborations at Caritas of Austin. Thank you for giving us this opportunity today, as well as our providers. The city needs a comprehensive approach to homelessness that is equitable and flexible based on community needs. A comprehensive approach means the inclusion of diversion programs, homeless prevention dollars, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing. Rapid rehousing was designed for people who have not experienced chronic homelessness to receive 3 to 24 months of financial assistance with the goal of maintaining housing after the assistance ends. Many rapid rehousing providers are receiving referrals that would be more appropriate for permanent supportive housing. Currently, there is not clear policies or protocols in place for rapid rehousing service providers to advocate and transfer clients to permanent supportive programs or vouchers. We are seeing inconsistency among service providers and confusion for clients as to the length of time financial assistance can be received. Given the level of experience, trauma, and complex needs of the people we serve, creating a standard of providing up to 24 months of rapid rehousing assistance will greatly benefit our clients. All vouchers for housing must have support services and the funding to pay for them. Support services are the key to improving client outcomes. At Caritas of Austin, our permanent supportive housing program has a 97% success rate, which we attribute to the case management and the support services. Given the current rental market, many of our clients struggle to keep up with cost of living, regardless of being employed or receiving disability. Having increased access to low-income housing will also benefit rapid rehousing clients maintain housing after exit. Keeping individuals housed saves our community money in the long term. When people are housed, it is less capacity and cost burdens for our criminal justice departments, medical providers, and community shelters. It is critical for our community to follow best practices set by the National Alliance to End Homelessness, Housing and Urban Development, and Substance Abuse, SAMHSA, so we can create a system that's equitable standards. Thank you.
The next speaker is Kate Grazzani.
Hi, good afternoon, Council. My name is Kate Graziani, one of the co-directors of Vocal Texas. I really appreciate y'all calling this special hearing, and addressing the challenges with rapid rehousing and the lack of permanent supportive housing in our community. I don't want to belabor this topic because I know that we can take action today and we'd like to move on. But because the budget items and the budget deficit has become such a topic of conversation, I want to just talk a little bit about what we're investing in here. We know that the research and evidence shows that it's far less expensive to address homelessness at the root cause and through prevention. These Band-Aid solutions are expensive because they are far too down the line. We haven't had an updated plan since the 2021 summit plan to house 3,000 people. We know that the number of people experiencing homelessness currently is well above 6,000, and we need a plan and a system that is adequate to meet that need. I do want to talk a little bit about shelter and the cost of the marshalling yard. Opening that was a $10 million plus investment for a 300-bed place. If you think about housing folks in a rapid rehousing program and offering 2 years of support, we're coming in well under a $10 million budget item. And so we have the opportunity now with the thousands of folks who are housed in rapid rehousing to keep them housed, to prevent them from exiting to homelessness, and until we see these PSH units come online that have been promised for years. We know there aren't enough PSH units planned either, and so we still have our work cut out there. But if we continue to only invest in Band-Aid solutions, we will never get to ending homelessness in our community, which I think is what we all want. And I just need to name that the root cause of homelessness is the rising cost of living in this community. We have to create affordable housing. We have to create low-income housing, or we will never stem the tide. So let's not forget that in our discussion on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. The next speaker is Walter Moreau. And then Robert Ochoa, if you'll be prepared to come to the mic. 2 minutes, please.
Walter Moreau, the Director at Foundation Communities. I just wanted to share with the committee some of our experience doing supportive housing. We are really struggling right now with funding and staff for the social services. We have about 1,000 residents, single adults, 20% chronic, 30% short-term homeless, and 50% at risk. So we're trying to not fill an entire building with the highest acuity folks, but serve folks before they end up on the street. We have on-site case managers, 24/7 staffing, nursing team. Our budget is about $6.5 million for services over 8 communities. That's about $800,000 a year per building for services. And we have to design the building services for a building, because if like we have a resident this week who's decompensating from mental health schizophrenia issues. She's afraid there's beings in the building structure, so she's pulled all the cabinets off the wall. Now she's got holes in the wall and she's getting into the electrical and the plumbing. So I have to think about the building safety. Of course, we've reached out to Integral Care, and they're offering some help and maybe a respite care situation where She needs more immediate psychiatric issues. I just shared, that's just like one little example of many residents are doing great, but we have many residents who have very, very high needs. Our cost is not $20,000 a resident a year, but of late it's $540 a month per resident, over 1,000 residents. I only have about 2/3 of my budget for services covered every year. We do receive some city funding, 9 different contracts, some transportation money, some food money. We try to patch that together. A couple $1 million from foundations and individuals that give specifically for services and supportive housing. And then we've got a gap of about $2.5 million that we're covering right now through other gifts and resources from other properties. I can share some more details if you'd like, or I can follow up in writing.
If you can follow up with us, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
The next speaker will be Eli Cortez and Robert Ochoa. If you will come to the mic, please.
Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Eli Cortez, and I'm an organizer at Vocal Texas. Today, you've heard from people with lived experience that have gone through the Rapid Rehousing Program. You've heard from service providers. You've heard from the Homeless Strategy Office. You know, our community is calling for changes in this program. We've heard from people on the streets through our outreach, our leadership. This program is not lasting long enough. And right now, with the influx of ARPA dollars, our housing providers took the opportunity to get people off the street today. And we applaud that because we want people to have access to housing. But what we know is that rapid rehousing is a very specific intervention. It works with people who need immediate intervention, that need, a couple, like a year, 6 months to kind of get their feet up and be able to get back to work. And right now we have individuals that are placed in that program that qualify for permanent supportive housing. And they have the same case management that somebody with that rapid intervention needs. And I know that today we can take action to ensure that those people have the support that they need, the length of care that they need, and that they get transitions into permanent supportive housing. And we're asking you to take action today to pass a motion that allows people in that program to have access to a full 24 months of financial assistance. And one thing I do want to note about that is, although programs may say that they offer 24 months, we've heard from people today, they have maybe 1 year of financial assistance and then a year of case management after that. So we're actually not seeing in our community today people receiving a full 24 months of rental assistance, even including a taper off. So we just want to ensure that people don't return to homelessness. I think we can all agree in this room, but we can't continue to operate this system and do it the same way that we've been doing it because it's failing some people. And so we're really asking for y'all support. We appreciate for y'all having us out today to speak and look forward to the opportunity to collaborate with your offices. Thank you so much.
Robert Ochoa, if you are here in the council chambers, would you please come to the mic? If not, Connor Kinney.
Thank you. And I have a couple of slides coming up. My name is Connor Kinney with Capital A Housing. Privileged to be the developer for 6 different nonprofits building supportive housing and residential substance abuse treatment in Austin right now, totaling 380 PSH units and 90 treatment beds. We've been able to work with the great teams under Pilar at the county and Mandy at the city and all of their teams that they work with. And if we can go to the next slide. I just wanted to give you an update. These are many of the projects that were in the briefing, but we have completed fundraising for all 470 units. There's still a couple of bureaucratic approvals to go through, but it's basically all there. One of those bureaucratics is that there's going to be a revised budget authorization up before you on May 30th at City Council for a new entry. Some stuff on this slide just to note how we got here is that while we did see about a 7% budget increase, it was really a pretty devastating loss of funds from the state as well as the planned philanthropic campaign that really just punched a huge hole in the budgets. And the county and the city and then the nonprofits themselves have stepped up tremendously to plug that hole and get these projects done. And then finally, next slide. Something that Ms. Sanchez from the county mentioned that I think is worth pointing out is that all of these projects are all actually owned by the nonprofits that operate them. So all those vouchers that are generating operating cash, all that cash is getting plowed right back into the projects. It represents about $1 million a year, or about 10% of their supportive services budget. The PFC tax breaks that y'all passed in July are also contributing almost $1 million a year to the support services budgets. And the nonprofits are projecting that they can probably raise about another 35%. So what that has done, in addition to having the efficiencies on site, is it's brought the support services projected gap per unit down to about $6,400 a year. So it's significantly cheaper than the sticker cost for your kind of typical program. But I do want to note that these are all projections and estimates, and they haven't raised this money yet. And so I know the nonprofits, many of whom are here, are looking forward to working with the city and county and raising that additional dollars. But one thing that we're real proud of is that these projects have a substantially almost half the cost to the city in terms of services dollars for your typical project. And that's taken a lot of hard work and sacrifice by everybody involved. Are there any questions? I'll make sure your offices all get this, and we're happy to provide more information at your request. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call for Robert Ochoa. Robert Ochoa.
Thank you.
That is all your speakers.
Thank you. Colleagues, I do have before you a motion that I would like our committees to consider recommending to the full council. The motion sheet is in front of you, and I'll read it for the record. The Public Health and Housing and Planning Committees jointly recommend to the full council that the city manager undertake the following work. 1, a coordinated assessment and wait list review. Work with the Continuum of Care's Leadership Council, Travis County, service providers, and community organizations to evaluate the coordinated assessment and referral process and make recommendations to improve the wait list for rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. Number 2, improve pathways to permanent supportive housing, explore and provide recommendations with the Leadership Council on the creation of a bridge to permanent supportive housing program to support individuals eligible for PSH and who currently receive rapid rehousing, and provide increased flexibility for the Homelessness Strategy Office to deliver rapid rehousing vouchers in the most effective and impactful way for up to 24 months as necessary. Number 3, collaborative long-term planning and investment. Initiate collaboration with Travis County, Central Health, and other partner agencies, including the private sector, to establish a forum for the partners to understand the current scope of public sector and philanthropic strategies to address homelessness in our community, discuss the opportunity and challenges of the homelessness response system, and to identify opportunities to align strategies, programming, services, and/or funding to better address homelessness in our community. Thank you for sharing that on the screen. If I get a second, I'll speak to it. Thank you. Seconded by Vice Chair Velasquez. Colleagues, y'all have heard the concerns and feedback that were just raised by many members of our community. This recommendation for our entire Austin City Council really seeks to receive more information and direct the city manager to address those challenges and the concerns that have been made, particularly around the coordinated assessment, around the rapid rehousing pathways and the permanent supportive housing pathways. With that, I will move adoption. Is there any objection to adopting this amendment? With no objection, this motion passes. Thank you. I do want to give a special thank you to Nirav Shah with Commissioner Howard's office, who is in the audience, and I want to thank him for his service and work on this item, and thank you to Vocal Texas, who also supported this item, and many other community partners.
Chair. I think just for, I was told for parliamentary purposes, we have to do the same thing. So I would also like a motion, if I may, to do this. We have from Councilmember Condrey, second from Chair Harper Madison. Is there any objection to adopting the same direction from the Housing and Planning Committee? Seeing none, we will also send that to the full council. Thank you.